Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Gypsy Moto Show. We're glad you're all here tonight. I'm Brett Winsel, and as always, I have with me tonight Aaron Lally
Hello.
and Chip Brock.
Hey guys.
All right, we're glad everybody's here tonight. We got a lot of things to cover. We have a great show lined up for you tonight. We're going to talk about a bunch of things that are kind of important that are coming up, and then we'll get into some other stuff that I think everybody's just going to kind of find interesting. So, just to start off, we'll talk about some of the big things happening at Gypsy Moto. First thing I want to talk about is some of the supplemental rules that we asked for from AMA. There's not a lot of electric mini bike classes, and so we did ask for a mini open, a mini e open. That will include pretty much all of the 50 class e-bikes. So we'll have that. And then we're also asking for a 50 open that will include e-bikes. So that would be e-bikes also racing with all of the other 50s in an open class. So we've asked for those two things. Another one of the things that we asked for, I'm not sure that we're going to get it yet, but this is what we're asking for. We had said that we would not be allowing any parents on the 50 track or on the track. That's just kind of a new thing that AMA is doing. What we did ask for, though, and this is something that all of you 50 parents might want to consider, is that if you were to go through our flagging training, that you could actually come down and flag and help out on the during the 50 races, the 50 class races. So in other words, you wouldn't be able to, if your kid falls down the track, you're not going to be able to leave your post and run down there and pick up your son or daughter. However, there would be more parents out there to help do that, and that'd be just kind of the deal. We would kind of go through our policies. You would be signing some things, and you would actually have been, trained in what our policies are. That's one option. If we get that, that'll be something that we're going to offer to the first. We'll figure out how many parents that will be, and we'll make that offer. So,
Yeah, that's a great idea. I didn't know that was on the table, but we like most of our flagging issues come from the mini classes, and I do think there's a lot of people that would love to help. We can, and definitely, we can get them trained up because it is important that they understand. What the whole process and the difference between a flagger and corner worker. So, yeah, that'd be great if we can do that.
get more parent involvement, and then hopefully just get people into the sport and helping the sport progress. So yeah, so
For sure.
that's one of the things that we're looking at.
What I was curious on those e-bikes, the mini e-bikes.
Yes,
What are we're not running the full track on those? What's the plan for the track for the e-bikes?
good question. So what we're going to do with all the electric bikes is we'll have them come off the start. They'll come up the start stretch, take a right, and head back into the trees. They'll make the loop through the trees, and we'll have that kind of prepped for those e-bikes. We're actually going to have Scott Anderson will be running through there with his Harley rake and flattening that out, prepping that whole area, smoothing it up for the e-bikes, just for that particular race. In the meantime, when that's happening, we're going to go on the back section of the track, and we'll start prepping re-prepping the back section of the track. And then once the 50s are all done, we'll come back through and re-plow through the 50 track area and get that loosened back up again. So about halftime or midway through the first moto and second moto, we'll actually be running the 50s. And so that's kind of the idea for that.
So they'll just be basically running the big tree section and then the parallel straight right there.
Right.
Okay.
Big hills that they have to climb on the little bikes, or on the electric bikes, and still plenty of obstacles and plenty of bumps. So
Oh, for
they'll
sure.
have the
Yeah.
whip section in there, and all of those jumps are either tabletops or singles. So it should lend itself well to e-bikes, I think, and nice big like bermed rolling corners so they can keep the speed up and that kind
Yeah.
of. So
And everybody can see them too. That's
exactly. That was exactly the reason that we wanted to do that, because then the parents that aren't flagging, let's say, at least they can see what's going on. They're right there close and that kind
yeah.
of. So
That's good. That should work well.
Yeah, and then on the bigger bikes, so the 50 open, we're actually going to let them run all the way around the, going to go through the trees. They're going to run up towards the finish line. We're going to veer them around the finish line so they don't have to go up and over. Going to go alongside the finish line and then around the outside of the big horseshoe turn, heading down towards the big rainbow turn that connects to the table back. Is that what we called it?
Yeah, table back.
Table back.
Because we table back into the old property from Landon and I started calling it that after we got our new property, and we'd be riding in the new property and then we'd table back into the old property.
Perfect name for it. So into the table back, that's the new name, into the horseshoe turn, and then back into the trees, and that'll make one lap. So, and that's what we're going to do with all of the 50s as well.
Yeah, maybe in an upcoming episode, Michelle can come in here and explain her track plans, right?
That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. I do have a couple other notes here that she does want me to bring up, though. If you have 50s or 65, if you're a 50 or 65 parent, because there's no parents on the track, one of the things that we'd like you to consider, I always did this with my kids, that's why I think Rochelle thinks it's normal, is have them practice picking up their bikes. And that was kind of one of the things that, whether people think it's good parenting or not, I thought it was. I would make my kids do it for half an hour. So if they ever crashed, it was like they already knew how to pick it up. And granted, some kids aren't big enough to pick up their bike, but there's certain things we can do to teach the kids to use their body weight to leverage that bike. And that might be some things that as parents you might look into a little bit and might just start working with your kids. It's just the way it's going to be in motocross here going forward. Any AMA events, that's just the way it's going to be. There won't be any 50 parents or 65 parents on the tracks. Essentially, there's Birdsong and there is Lloyd's, and those are the people that insure motocross. And they've both pretty much made it pretty clear that no parents on the track. Yeah. So that's
there's a couple things I really like about that, and one is that obviously it takes that off the table as a problem. At some point maybe kids too little to do it, but then if they start working on it, then they know they're big enough to do it. They know they're confident in doing it. Yeah.
But so there'll be that. That's one of the things she wanted us to touch base on. The other thing is there will be no one allowed in the crow's nest. That's kind of become an issue where every time somebody thinks they want something to change, they come in the crow's nest. And so there will be absolutely no one allowed in the crow's nest. And what instead will happen is there will be Dan Morrison. Most everybody knows Dan Morrison. He's our old flagger. Dan's got a big personality. He loves working with the public. He loves telling jokes and likes just helping people out. So he's going to be our contact person, and he's basically going to spend his time walking back and forth between the starting gate and the crow's nest and then up to sign up, that kind of thing. And if anybody has an issue, they're going to tell it to Dan. Dan's going to figure out who needs to be talked to get those issues addressed. And so that's how that's going to work. So
does he get a green jacket?
He gets a green jacket. He's already got the green jacket, going to dress him up in it, and who knows what else she's going to do. But those two kind of always have, I think they have a love-hate relationship, those two. They both like each other, but they both like to pick on each other.
Yeah.
That'll be kind of interesting to see what happens between the two of them on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's pretty much it as far as announcements go. And other than that, I think we're going to have a great race. Lastly, I'd like to touch base on the 3 schools that we have already signed up and ready to go this year. So June 6th, 7th, and 8th, it's official. We do have Jesse Frost and Brandon Kruger coming to do the 605 Moto training camp. So anybody that would like to be part of that camp, make sure that you go to either their Facebook page, or we will, as of tonight, have a link on our website. If you go to race events and then go all the way to the right and then come to the very bottom, there will be clinics, and there will be links for all of our clinics on that page. You just click on that, it'll take you right to their contact information, their Facebook page, and their website if they have one. And then you can get signed up, ask questions. You get a hold of them, find out what get your questions answered. So really excited about that. I have to say, I've always liked Brandon. He's always been pretty much first class guy when he came here and raced. Always been a great racer. I've watched Jesse over the years. Didn't know him quite as well, but I've come to know him better here recently. And I have to say, I am very impressed with him as a person. Say very impressed with how they conducted their business, how concerned they are about what they're going to teach and how they're going to teach it and that kind of thing. So I think anybody that comes to that one is going to get some really good training. I mean, their big thing is small groups of people with each trainer so that you get a lot of one-on-one training in, then they can actually break down what you need and get you in the group with those people that are at your same level and work on those things. So that's the first one I want to make everybody aware of. And then June 9th, it's official that we will have the Moto Academy here. So that's going to be basically Moto School Week. So 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, there's going to be moto training. So if somebody wants to really get a lot of training in, that's your opportunity to get fully immersed in motocross training, and both for the kids and the parents. So if you're a parent and your child is in one of these camps, you're fully encouraged to be there, learn everything you can, even if you don't ride. So you don't have to be a rider to be part of this. You can come learn what your kids are being taught, and then also go home and work on those things. So it's kind of one of those things that's not just for the kids or not just for the riders, it's also for the parents. So both of those are going to be that week, the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. And ultimately, I guess I haven't said enough about this. Moto Academy, that one, I've spoken with them. I think that's going to be a really good camp. It's going to be Mitchell Prescott that's going to be teaching that one. And if you have any questions about him, you can look up Mitchell Prescott on their website and learn a little bit more about him. And if you need to contact him, want to ask some questions, their contact information will be there, and so you can find out what's going on there. I haven't talked to Mitchell himself yet, but I have talked with their contact person, and I'm very impressed with them. So that's why we decided those would be the two that we would do this year for motocross for sure. So we have that. Lastly, we have the slide school, August 6th, and that's confirmed as well. There may be some additional dates, so that'll be during the rally. They're going to come along with AFT. It's primarily a flat track school, but there's always some room for learning to back it in on a hard surface for motocrossers. Second moto at the right track, sometimes that's a skill that everybody needs. And we've all backed it in, but there's actually a science to backing it in different types of conditions. And so that's something that everybody might consider. And again, that will also have a link on our Facebook or our website. So have a look
Now,
at that.
would anybody be able to take that class if they don't have a flat track specific bike? I mean, like if you have a knobby bike, would that be okay?
Yes. The kind of cool thing that they're doing there is you'll bring your own bike, but they also supply bikes
Cool.
on the slide school. So Royal Enfield is sponsoring this, and they've actually built some purpose-built slide bikes. So they're not necessarily flat track bikes, but they're bikes built to slide. So in other words, you're going to come in and you're going to be throwing it sideways and actually using the engine braking on the bike, not your brakes, to get into the slide, and then learning how to position your body, where your elbows got to be, where you need to be looking on the track coming around. A lot more than that, but they're actually going to teach you the science of it and what you need to, how you need to approach it. Definitely something that everybody should look at. We always have a few things that we want to talk about on every show, and one of the things that had occurred to me that I have a question of, I mean, I think I know a lot of the answers, but I'm curious what you guys think is, how did we end up with two tracks in South Dakota? That's really all we have that are two tracks or tracks that are putting on races in South Dakota, outdoor type tracks anyway. And how did we get there? And then maybe how do what are your thoughts on how we keep those tracks? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. A lot of, like say, as I'd say, 15 years ago, there was probably 20 tracks, and I think what happened to the ones that are gone is it's sort of a classic uh, business analysis. I think they weren't fun enough to keep enough riders around to generate the amount of money that it takes to run the track, including the insurance. And I think that what was happening on so many of them, and I rode a lot of them, and kind of some of them, like I some of them you'd kind of ride and force yourself around them, but they weren't that much fun. Generally, they were kind of sketchy. So it was kind of the combination of people getting hurt, which isn't fun, and then just that because they were kind of dangerous, it was difficult to put down good laps and have a good flow. So it takes the fun away. And I mean, there's a ton of them, like Volga, Grandmas, um, I think even Lemon, and then and part of it, I mean, I think it's the tracks that are left have made a conscious decision to sort of work towards safety and work towards fun. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just taking a realistic look at your business model as a track. And if you're building a track that only appeals to a small number of people, drives other people away, while it's also raising your insurance, you're going to run out of money. And nobody's really making money, but if you're in the hole every year, you're not going to keep going.
Right.
So
I don't know. I think it was last winter. Bill Stork and Jeff Barthel and I were all skiing at Terry Peak, and we're riding up the chairlift, and we're talking about all the tracks that we used to race and how they're just gone now in South Dakota. And the one thing led to another. And one of the comments Bill said to me, and I don't remember exact wording, but essentially he was saying this. He says, the problem with motocross is we're still paying the same thing that we were 30 years ago.
yeah,
And if you think about it, it's kind of true.
yeah,
It's that thing where it used to cost, I mean, not that motocross is cheap, because it's not, but we really haven't gone up in the prices much when you compare it to inflation. When like insurances used to be, you could buy insurance for $250. You could have the ambulance there for $250. You could buy trophies for $1,000. Just the costs on those things were so much lower. Where now we're basically charging the same thing. We have upped it a little bit, but it's definitely not kept up with inflation. Now you're talking $1,000 minimum for a insurance. You're talking probably more like 1,500, depends on what you're doing. Same thing for ambulances. Just even the plates now are going to be $1,500, just like the foam plates. If you do trophies like the Gypsies trophies that we gave away at the banquet, that's, if we had to pay for those, that probably would have been $10,000. So the prices on things have just gone through the roof. And then water. It used to be, if you're going to water track, and nobody watered tracks like we do back, we've come to a whole new understanding of water. But when you watered a track back then, if we were to water it like we do, it'd probably be $100, where it's $1,000 now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The other thing and like club memberships, which I'm a member of 2 clubs, and in a roundabout way, they both cost about the same. And it's funny because I mean, that's a common discussion. Well, that's too much money, whatever the number is. If it's $700, which nobody in South Dakota is that much, but I think Lincoln is $700. But South Dakota is anywhere, say 350 is a good average number. And I'm like, and people, and I'll have those discussions. To me, it's like, yeah, no, I think that's all right. And then yet the climbing gym that I belong to is $1,200 a year, and it's one building. And the baseball place where I go hit indoor baseball, that's about the same. And they're full.
Right.
You know, it's like people, yeah, moto, we're kind of funny. Well,
Right.
like if you ask people, and I almost feel like with moto, like at some point 30 years ago, somebody asked, is that too much? And so for 30 years, we've just been talking about it. It's too much, whatever
Right.
it is. Whereas it's like, yeah, nobody's going into the climbing gym and bitching and climbing and then bitching. This is too much money. And like,
right.
So do you think then the price for practice days and stuff is what's driving those tracks away? Because, you know, as everybody knows, I'm new to this area. I just moved here about 3 years ago. I'm from Florida. And in Florida, what was happening to the tracks is they were drying up because the land was worth more than the track could make. So the owners, you know, squeaking by to, you know, just break even. And then, you know, some big developer comes in and offers them a ton of money and, you know, it just gets swallowed up. But out here, the only thing I can think of that causes tracks to close is you have alternatives out here. Like in Florida, there was nowhere to go trail riding. There was nowhere. So if you wanted to ride your dirt bike, you had to go to a track. And here, you know, we have a lot of Forest Service and people own property of their own and stuff. It's a little more wide open. So I would think that would be one of the biggest competitions for a track owner.
yeah, I mean, I think that's logical. And I think that it definitely, like, there's a ton of dirt bikers in the Black Hills that just ride the Black Hills. But it's been like that forever. And even when I moved to the hills in 13, there was, I mean, Red Dot was still there. Hermosa was there. There was a track at Spearfish. There was a track at Bell. Yeah, I mean, and those are all gone. And then in eastern South Dakota, there's more that are gone. And we don't have the trail riding in eastern South Dakota. I think, in fact, if you start thinking about all those tracks, I'd say Hermosa was the best example where lots of people got hurt. And so you just didn't have that, you know, if you're hurting people, your insurance goes up and then the appeal goes down. And
nobody wants to ride on a track they're just going to get hurt on.
Exactly. It's no fun. And I think that was sort of the advent of Supercross. And I'm not a Supercross hater, but I think the challenge of like all these little clubs and private tracks up here in the upper Midwest, but I think it's the same problem everywhere, is they're not going to build a Supercross only track and then a traditional moto track. So you get this mix. And so you might have a beautiful track, but you've got 4 obstacles on it or maybe even one that just keep hurting people and you can't flow a lap. Yep. Volga was the best example. They actually had an incredible set of whoops, great track with one triple that like every week somebody was getting hurt and for 2 years until they finally shut down. I personally think it's the number one thing is the Supercross obstacles on motocross tracks.
Yep.
You know?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
That's a tough one for sure. When you got very few people that can do it, and then there's always that, you always hear that thing. You got the kids that is like, well, we got to have some things on here that not everybody can do, that only the pros can do. And that's not necessarily the truth. I mean, if you do that, you end up in that situation where you're hurting people. One thing real quick on Hermosa, the other thing that happened there is the town grew right up next to them. And people just did not like motocross. And, so that's the other big thing, is having that buffer between you and anybody that can attack you, that's a motocross hater. And I think that has been another big thing. And I know that was a big part of Hermosa. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. What I was going to say was, you were saying that about, people with higher skills, they can have fun on a track that, appeals to everyone. Thinking about what you said about the track appealing, having a track that appeals to everyone instead of just your top, 3%.
Oh,
that
right.
Even the top 3% can come onto a track like ours and have a good time. Case in point, Marvin Muscan, when he was here for that Verticross race.
Right.
And he rode a few laps on our track and was, you said, just beaming about our track.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. That's one that I'll never forget is he pulls up and I can't remember, I'm not sure who it was who said to him, "You going to hit that jump?" And he was looking at the jump. I think it was the step up, if I'm not mistaken. It was either the step up or it might have been one of the jumps, the big tables in the back. And he said, "Oh no, it's too big." And so I was thinking, yeah, okay. And then whoever it was that said it to him comes around, takes a lap, and just flies it, makes it look super smooth on one of those adventure bikes. And he's like, "Well, I guess I will have to do it now." And then he goes out there and does it just like so effortlessly. First jump, he looks like he's jumped it a million times, and those guys just ride different.
But you said he,
Okay.
but you said he came off the track just giddy with
Oh,
about our track.
yeah, he had nothing but good to say about it. So, you always wonder what's their reaction going to be. And granted, he's probably one of the nicest humans on the face of the planet. Once I got to meet him, you could not be a fan of that guy. So there's that he might just be a super nice guy, but I think he's also very sincere, and he had nothing but great things to say. It's just like, this track is amazing, and I had so much fun. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm thinking, well, thank you for just being here, and he was more thankful just from getting to ride on the track. And yeah.
So see that tells you everything you need to know. I mean, here's a top level pro that's having a blast on the track, and here's me, a vet rider, and I have a blast on that track.
Right.
So you gotta. That's a big thing for any track owner. You got to find something that's safe for everyone. Everyone can do, but yet the fun factor is going to be there. Because most of us ride dirt bikes because they're fun. I don't.
Out.
So I'm not having fun like Aaron said. If I'm out there having to roll every few minutes to get past a triple, then you lose your flow, and then you're trying to get back up to speed. Then you come up on another obstacle that's made for professional level riders. I've ridden those tracks and they're terrible.
And a lot of times they're not even made for professional level riders. They're just made for somebody that's willing to take that chance and have that particular skill level. Because, I'm not going to mention the tracks, but there's tracks that I've been to that you've got a third tapped out fourth gear straightaway into a jump that you can't get the full bike on the face. So
Right.
Anybody that knows motocross, what's going to happen? If
Yep.
you get the full bike on the face at that speed, that's not even a jump. That's at that point, yeah, you're getting through it, and yeah, you're racing other guys. But is it really fun? I mean, it's not really fun.
Right. No.
It's fun because you're racing, but it's not flowy. It's not fun.
Right. And then that's another problem is that people are building tracks with skid steers. It doesn't work.
Right.
Like, it just doesn't work.
Right.
And you just can't move enough dirt. It would take you the rest of your life to build a decent track with a skid steer.
Right.
But that's what they got, and they kind of don't know any better.
Right.
It's kind of like a question, well, why are we doing this? How is this happening? Well, if you go to a supercross, you got big pointy jumps with gaps because it looks great to the 70,000 people, 65,000 of which don't ride bikes or don't ride dirt bikes.
Right.
It's cool in the same way that when we were kids, they jump motorcycles over the lions or whatever at the circus. It's a spectacle. And I get that, and you could say, well, it's only top level pros can do it, but even for the top level pros, obviously there's a risk that's unnecessary. And if it was any different, we wouldn't be short 5 guys in the pro ranks right now. But they got to do it. They get paid to do it. It's the show for the people that want the show. But then to take that same element and put it on a amateur track where there's no spectators, but it's really the only driver is your ego. And I think that it was really crazy around in Eastern South Dakota, because Eastern South Dakota went crazy with the Supercross style tracks, but you'd go 50 miles east into Minnesota and there's all these big, beautiful old school tracks and they're not, I mean, is anybody saying, yeah, Millville's not, I'm too good for Millville. But if you look at Millville, it's a super safe track.
Right.
Super fat. fast is not necessarily dangerous. It's point to point gaps, sharp backsides. You know, when you have a long drawn out landing, you know, you can race it. You go as fast as you can, and if you can jump 10 feet farther than the next guy, because you're going faster, you pass them.
Right.
Whereas on a supercross track, you can't do that because then you'll flatland and break your forks. So I don't know. And around here, we'd go over to Mankato, which is like the safest, freaking, most fun track you'll ever go on. And everybody's there. The fast guys, everybody. So
black sand, elevation change.
Yeah.
You know, and
is that track still open?
Yeah.
Super
Minnesota has lost a few tracks, but not many. It's funny if you look at it over time, how many District 23 riders make it to the pros.
So
it's
true.
For a relatively, it's not a huge district, and it's only one district, but they're
cold climate, short racing season.
Yep. But I mean, the list is long. You know, Dungy, Gavin Faith, Brayton,
Martins,
the Martins. Yeah,
it's just motocross and supercross because they're different. And
yes.
You come, like, I know guys that are very fast, you know, arena crossers or racers around here. They're great riders, but they come to our track with the supercross setup, and it's like, it works, but you're going to beat yourself up and you're not going to enjoy. Like you're still going to have fun, but they're completely different sports. You talked about the speed. That's one of the big things. If you have your bike set up right, you have your suspension set up right, you know, the bike's not rebounding fast. You've got it slowed down. You got that to the right speed. You've got the gearing right. Then it's like, it clicks. It's like, oh, I get outdoor motocross. If you've never been, you know, really schooled in outdoor motocross and you're running a 53 rear, you're probably wondering down the back straight, like, how is this fun to anybody? Because your bike is, you know, you're just tuned and everybody's blowing by you. But when you have the right gearing and you're running the right tires, got the right suspension, you know, the bike shines and you shine. And I think that's one of the big things too, is a lot of people just really don't get that there is a definite break between supercross and motocross. Two completely different, fundamentally different sciences and sports.
Yeah. You know, and I think it's interesting to kind of bring the South Dakota topic to it's like, yeah, we've lost all these motocross tracks except two, but we're not really going backwards with arena cross. Arena cross just gained a venue, and you know, it's like, I don't want to get rid of arena cross. I don't want to get rid of supercross.
Right.
What I hate to see is getting rid of motocross tracks is because it's a mix.
Right.
And it's like, the tracks that are just arena cross are doing well, and the tracks that are just motocross are doing well. The ones that are all gone were the mix.
Right.
Makes sense.
And you do the rider justice there, because our riders actually get that, you know, practice on both types of tracks and learning to set their bikes up for it. So that when they go other places, you know, they're actually going to do well. Where if you never learn that part of it, I don't care how great you are, if you don't learn the bike setup and learn how to change that setup, you will never be successful in our sport, because that's just inherently part of the sport.
Yeah. You know, and it's interesting when you mention that, because like when I moved to the hills, I would have had my 08, and I had a supercross setup because I had to ride tracks that were both. And it was a struggle. Like when I go out to Farmingdale in particular, it just beat the hell out of me. And, but then sort of once I figured that out, you know, then I have a motocross setup now, because I really quit riding supercross tracks when I moved. But they're completely different. And that's maybe another problem with the mixed tracks is it's like, it's kind of like SMX in a way. It's like, yeah, there's parts of the world, and Eastern South Dakota was one where it's basically, it's always been SMX. It's always been a mix. So you couldn't get your bike set up. And so you probably do have it, even if you don't get hurt, it just takes a lot of the fun out of it, you know?
the mindset's different. I mean, if
Yeah.
you think about it, one of the things that when we went to the 20 and 30-minute motos, we just didn't have wrecks because
Right.
everybody wanted to finish the race.
Yeah.
Where when we were having the 5 to 8 minute motos, and it's going to be interesting on these short motos that we're doing on these, have we made the track big enough? Have we changed the mindsets of people? It's going to be interesting to see how that works. But prior to that, when we would do the same track, but when we would do the 8 minute moto, people were crashing all the time because it was,
Yeah.
it was like a sprint, and that was in their
Yeah.
mind. It wasn't like I got to finish the race. It's like I have to get to the front. I got to be there. And I think, that's the other thing. When you race outdoor, yeah, you're going 150%, but you're zen, you're calm, you're like
Yeah.
flowing. For me on arena cross, it's always been a whole lot more of like you're amped up and you better get there, and your senses are heightened. And now there's people that naturally excel at that, like Donovan Lindsley. That guy is just a machine when it
Yeah.
comes to arena cross, and he looks calm and he rides calm. I don't know if you remember Delaware. He had that same kind of riding style, sat up and just looked calm. He was one of those guys that had that same thing. And there's certain people that excel at that. But saying that, the two are definitely different when it comes to your mindset as well. So
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you just when you have a 5 minute moto, you have to take chances.
right,
Like it's the now or never, and so you do. Whereas if you've got 15 minutes to work with, you can start planning a strategy and it's just like I say, it's mindset, just like you said.
Well, your conditioning comes in play then,
Yeah, it
with the
does.
longer motos.
Yeah.
the whole chess match of the thing. That's the kind of fun thing about like the long motos is I'm on you, and I want you to know I can do this all day long. I'm going to hunt you down. I'm going to hunt
Yeah.
you down. I'm going to hunt you down. And once you get in front of somebody, just running away, getting that gap, and then making sure that every time you get to the corner, you can look at them and just let them know I can do this all day long. Whether you can or not, is another
Yeah.
thing. You want them to believe it, right?
Right.
And so there's all those things that happen with the longer motos that we don't get with the short motos, just because it's such an all-out sprint and everybody's just trying to get there. So
Right. Another thing that I think, and I would be curious to like be more involved with or just learn more about other tracks. But I think one of the things that I've definitely seen has worked for us after we bought the additional grounds and we were talking about what we were going to do. Like we would talk and we had every meeting and we would have special moto meetings, and we would, as a group, go out and walk the track and talk about what we were going to do. And then we're going to try something, and if it worked, we would figure out how to integrate it. And I mean, not to sound too much like a corporate head, but it's like it was the team effect that we teamed on it. So then, we just got better results, but also we were kind of all in on it.
right.
And I think we just developed that culture, and it was always wanting to have more guys coming out riding and fewer accidents, and just like work towards how do we make this more fun and more appealing and grow our. Whereas if you look at so often, I've showed up at a track and it's like, who did that? Like all of a sudden something will show up and nobody knows who did it, why they did it, and it kind of ruins it. So you don't have that buy-in. And also, like when stuff like that happens, there's clearly no concern for, or not enough concern for, how is this going to affect the mass riders? Because you'll hear, oh, everybody's saying, did you see that new double? That's so dumb or whatever. But yet, then if everybody's saying that, why doesn't it go away?
Right. But you can also tell when someone different preps the track too.
Yeah.
You know, how many times have you ridden a track, and I mean, everything's perfect. And then you go out one day and the jump faces have a weird takeoff on them. And, you'll talk to, somebody and they'll say, oh yeah, the guy that usually preps the track wasn't able to get to it. And he had his, his coworker do it. And it's weird how just little things like that can throw off a whole track.
You're so right. And in that respect, not to make Brett blush here, but we're lucky to have Brett because
Yes.
it's one in 1,000 guys that can do that. And even when he's got the right equipment, knows how to do it. And you ride our track and the jump faces are incredible, front sides and back sides.
Yep.
And even it was, I don't think, it was even last summer where it was exactly like you said, Chip, where Brett got tagged off doing something.
Yep.
Somebody jumped in a skid steer and just cleaned up just one little lip.
Yep.
And then
he shot you to the moon straight up.
And everybody, and for whatever reason, and I'm happy filling that role, but people are happy. I get along good with a lot of people, and it wasn't a complaining thing, but I'm telling you, like in an hour, I heard from like 30 people. What did they? Why was that guy out there? So I mean, everybody kind of gets it that we've kind of got, when you come to the Gypsy Club, you expect a certain experience, and that includes Brett jump faces. So
he does a great job.
You can't deviate from that.
Live up to here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do know this. I've had people, another person, I'm not going to mention the name, but is like, I don't know why you don't face the jumps every time. And it's like, well, number one, if they're jumping like you want them to, you don't mess with them. You know what I mean? You might track pack them, but you're not going to change what works perfectly. And all that is just wasted time. And just because in your mind, you think that it needs to have a dozer blade up at every time, it probably doesn't. It all comes down to geometry and then being able to see and ride it. That's the other thing. All of our jumps, we don't put people on the track unless we've jumped it ourselves and cased every one. I mean, that's our policy. We make sure that we do the jump, chop the throttle, fall out of the sky, and land right on it. And if I've done that myself 3 times and I can live with it, well, then we're okay to go. You know, we're going to put somebody on a jump that's like, yeah, go try it. If I do, I'll always clarify it like at riders meeting. Listen, these jumps are untested, and I'm just telling you that right now because we got practice rolling, and whatever happened, this is how it is. So you have right now your chance to get your money back and quit, or you go out there and you do some sight laps first. Yeah. Be sure it looks good. If it's really bad, we're going to pull everybody off and we're going to fix it. But if it works, then we'll go with it. And that's one of the things. That's the only time we wouldn't touch something. Is right.
Yeah, and I guess I had a couple comments on that, and one is that I didn't. I'm not a track builder, but I've ridden a lot of tracks, and I've say down in southern or most of Colorado, but definitely southern Colorado, Arizona, you see a lot of really long jump faces. And they're not that steep, and so they hang. It's like they can hang together in that dry, terrible climate, and our jumps are the same way. Like the jump faces are long; they're long enough that you're not suspension bottoming in the jump because that tears up the jump face, and they're long enough that you ride off them. You're not blipping off them and ripping out the face. So the length is huge. But then the angle is big too, because I mean, you're going to deal with erosion, but the erosion has the angle of the incline has a massive effect on the erosion,
Getting that belly. And the big thing there, in my opinion, if you build the track right, the track actually seasons over the course of the race or practice, and it gets better. To me, always the thing is like if you've done the prep to track enough times, what's going to happen on every jump. You know where the ruts are going to start forming just because of the lines, and you maybe try to put something in. Like a lot of times we'll get people like, why'd you put a hump on the inside of the corner? To me, it's always like, all right, you've clearly not been a motocrosser, because if we don't put something on the inside, we're always going to the inside on motocross. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's just take the good line. And that inside jump, or a lot of times we put an obstacle somewhere just so it might change what happens on that jump face because we know what's going to happen, and it also kind of changes the whole dynamics is what I was looking for of that corner, that turn, and the entry into that jump kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
there's a whole lot more science that goes into it than just going plowing the track down, throwing some water on it, and back dragging a face. It's
Yeah. And it's funny too. And I think about one of the most common mistakes I see is people will go out and build the whole track. And then once you start riding it, it doesn't line up. And
Yeah.
I think that was another thing that we did pretty well was like, we rode the track flat a lot to figure out where the speeds were going to be, and then you could move the corner if the corner was moving for naturally, you could do that.
right.
And before you moved a bunch of dirt for a jump. So you can't, if you think about it, you build a turn track and then you figure out where the jumps go. And,
Right.
I think we did that. And that's the other thing I guess I see in the Minnesota tracks. And actually the Lincoln track is really good too, where it's like, it just all fits. But then I have only been going to Lincoln for about 5 years. They don't change. That's once you get it,
Right.
don't change it. But so a
Right.
lot of those tracks in Minnesota, they have not changed in
You-
40 years.
Nationals, they've been that way forever with just maybe slight improvements.
Right.
They've got something.
Maybe for a final comment, it might be fun to just have like a focus on track building and get I have comments as a user. I'm a user group.
Yeah.
And I've been around it a lot. I've seen what you done, but it'd be kind of cool to get maybe some other, like maybe that guy I keep hearing about Mesquite as being this incredible track. That'd be kind of cool to see what his thoughts were. Mine or Chip's?
Which one do we want to talk about next?
We can't
I
tell you
think
you're
Chip,
looking at.
I think it'd be a good time for the mud prep stuff.
You want to bring that up, Chip, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the weather forecast. I look at it every day, and at first it was showing rain for our race next weekend, but now the newest forecast, it looks like they pushed it back to like Monday or Tuesday. But that was just something that you always put in the back of your mind. You're like, well, is it going to be a mud race? Is it going to be a dry race? Are we going to have snow? I've never raced in snow. Who knows what you do with that? I guess I would just walk my bike around the whole track. I don't know. And, how do you, I know how to prep for heat, but I've never had to race in, freezing temperatures or, anything like that. And mud is probably my least favorite.
Right.
I mean, if I found out it was going to be a mud race this weekend, I don't know.
That's not your thing.
Yeah, it's not my thing.
And that, to me, that's kind of, I would be interested to know what each of us, what your favorite track type would be to race and that kind of thing. I mean, I'm just the opposite. Now, I don't want it to be sloppy Anaheim 1 conditions or like some of the Anaheim 3 that one time where it was like it was just like, can you make it around the track? I don't want
Yeah.
But my favorite track and the way we used to prep the track when we had the old red clay years ago, it's all we had, was the rule was if I can walk that night, if I can walk across the track, it's not wet enough. So that was kind of how wet we used to have to get it. And we go up there. And that's why I loved the quads. I got to be honest. Some of them didn't like it because they thought they were farm tractors, but some of them loved it. And so we would send the quads out first and last. So, in practice, we'd send them out and they would just basically break down every clod, every disc, chunk that had come up, that you didn't hit with the rototiller or whatever. And they would just get it like a flat, and the thing was like Play-Doh everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is my absolute favorite. If I have an option, is that Play-Doh feel, because then you end up with 100 ruts across the track everywhere. And every time, if you don't like that one, you just basically make yourself a new rut. And if you get into a corner, it might take you, if somebody's ahead of you, it might take you a couple of laps to build that perfect rut to pass them. But once you kind of got that laid in, and once you lay down that pass and you go blowing by them, they're just sitting there thinking, what just happened? And they think you got like superhuman powers or something. You don't, but you just had that time to set it up. So I like that kind of a thing. How about you, Aaron? What?
Hate to sound like a broken record, but I agree. Like those preps that we had in those years, I mean that it was incredible. I mean, I really learned to ride ruts at Gypsy. I mean, we'd have ruts that were 100 yards long, and you just had to learn to stay. What's that?
And folding over. Remember?
Yeah. I meant like we used to get ruts in the back straights and stuff, just long straight ruts. So to me, that was like super challenging. But you learn to ride them, and then you kind of have that advantage over the next guy. But yeah, I remember I remember one time that we counted like 10 ruts in that corner before the old step up, because the rut would form on the inside to the point where it was like Joe stood in there, and I took a picture. I've got a picture of it somewhere, and the rut's up to his knee.
I remember that.
So it's to the point where we can't use that rut anymore because it's too deep. So you make another one, you make another one, you make another one. I mean, that was just so epic but I'd say the best race conditions I ever had in any one race were that one where Jesse and I were racing.
Oh yeah.
Because I distinctly remember it's like I can go absolutely anywhere.
Oh, when he got his Honda.
He got that Honda.
Okay.
But I just distinctly remember it's like the whole race I was just thinking about where I'm going to go. And I'd never had a race where it was like anywhere on the track I could make a line, but it wasn't like it was just tacky and it wasn't really bogging me down. So that was the best. I hate to say it, but I probably do my best on just baked clay because I grew up riding that at Saddleback here, and so not that many places get that. I mean, around here, I think it's Southern California, but it's not fun, but I'm kind of good at it. But the stuff, and it took me a long time to learn to ride the Gypsy prep. I don't even know if I'm good at it, but it is so fun.
You're pretty good at it.
Yeah. So Chip, you must be a sand guy, right?
I had no choice, but since I got to South Dakota, I really like kind of the intermediate type soil where it's, kind of hard, but not pavement. You know what I mean? Kind of like our track, how after, midday, how it gets. I like it like that, where you can, roll through the corners really easy and stuff like that, keep a lot of momentum. I like that about the tracks out here. So I just went back to my favorite track in Florida about a month ago, and I had to almost relearn it again, riding in that condition, because it's like thicker and, loamy and everything like that. And your body position and stuff's a little bit different. And so it was different, but I do think I like a harder packed track now.
One thing you're going to get with our track, I mean, this is what I predict for this coming race, is this first race, practice is going to be out of this world because we still have all the frost that's in the ground and we won't have a whole lot of practice on it. So it's just going to be frost fractured, 2 foot deep. And it's just going to be that crystallized, broken, sandy kind of feel to it. So practice day is going to be awesome. We will go through and we'll till it that night, get it wet down, and we're going to get it very deep. I'm going to say that in practice laps, we're going to do some just like maybe 2 lap practices just so we can get into the races. Otherwise, we're just not going to get through them all. Day. It's going to be wet. It's going to be one of those things. And again, we're going to go through and try to talk to everybody about don't follow everybody. Of course, that's not going to happen, but there's going to be some people that are going to out there going to listen to it and, you know, try to put a track all the way across the track if we can, kind of a thing. When we start the pros, it's going to be muddy. It's not going to be horribly muddy, but it's going to be soft. And then we get to midday, it's going to be each moto is going to just become more and more epic as we get to it. And then we will re-prep track. We probably won't need to put any water down. We'll probably just go ahead and till the track midway through. And then that group's going to get a sight lap again, and then it'll be a whole new track again. And the dirt's going to just be really good. It's going to just be Play-Doh. And then I think I predicted that we finish that day without, getting the second moto dry track. I think it's just going to finish on because it's going to be in the 70s. And then I kind of predict that same thing for the next day. And so what I would suggest is if you're on those early motos, Pam the fenders and everything that might get mud stuck to it, or that new, what is that new stuff you can spray on that makes the mud not stick, that
SC1.
Yes, that would be a good thing for if you're early motos. If you've got foam, it wouldn't hurt to put foam, on your brakes and some of those areas that might collect mud. But I don't think that's going to last very long, and then we'll be into drier conditions. And again, it's not ever going to be sloppy muddy. It's just going to be first moto conditions where they're always going to be softer. And quite frankly, if we don't do that, it will turn dry. So we have to that's just part of having big races. Those first motos are going to be a little bit wetter. So
how do you think the resurfacing is going to react to the mud or react to the water relative to like what the old surface was?
That's a really good question. So it's going to be a whole lot. Again, we've been getting drier and drier and drier and being able to do that because this new surface really retains the moisture. On a really hot day like in August, it might like dry up that top portion, that much of it, and it looks dry. But as soon as you drive across it, you're digging up and it's just wet, so you might get that sun bake on the top. But one of the things I think you remarked about at one time is how heavy that dirt is.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get dusty and float in the air. It gets up and you can watch it come up and fall. So the granules are fairly large sized and they're heavy. So we don't get that dust. So I think this new surface, well, I already know because we've played with it. It's going to be a whole lot better than our old clay surface. And to top that off, by the time we get to the state championship, we'll have like another foot of humus in the entire track intermixed, and we'll basically be at that point where every lap's a new lap. And we'll probably end up using about 25% of the water that we use now, just because that humus will basically, take care of that sun baking. And it's just basically like a nurse crop in farming is almost how that's going to act to that dirt surface. It's going to shade that surface, retain the moisture, and then that surface that we're riding on is going to almost be like manure. I don't know if anybody's ridden on manure, but there's nothing better than like dried manure in a corral or something, not slime manure.
But. Terrence used to put a foot at Reliance. He put a foot of manure on every year. That's how we start the year, and it was nice.
Yeah, that's so. I mean,
all you farm boys, man. Where do you get this stuff? You're riding in manure.
If you've ever ridden in a corral that's
no, I haven't, Brett. I
It may not smell the best, but I'm going to tell you, it's all traction.
Okay.
It's
traction. And that's one of the things that we always do. We have the short track, so we have like 3,000 bales a year that we take out and we mix into the surface, and all that ultimately turns into biomass. So every year we keep mellowing the track out. I don't remember the name of the product, but we've had like a surfactant that we've been putting on the track, and that's also helped to mellow the dirt. And Brandon Hatley had donated the surfactant, and that really, you could really tell that stuff worked.
Where are you getting the biomass this summer?
So we've got a bunch of chips. They're thin chips. We've got a bunch of that. Then we have a whole bunch of planer shavings, and the planer shavings are the best thing that we've ever used. They seem to just get in there, and you till it one time, and they just dissolve. But for whatever reason, that the way that they're made up, they just get trapped into everything, and they don't ever let the dirt stick. So the dirt never sticks together. So it's always just like peat moss. So it's kind of like racing on peat moss all the time. And basically, that old track that we had before we donated the road to the city, and the city had a contractor come in and they stripped off all of our topsoil and put it in the road. Now they wonder why the road's settling. That's the type surface that we're going to be getting back to.
So is it we have to haul it, or?
Yeah, we'll probably be putting, I'm going to say we'll probably be putting 300 dump truck loads of chips, sawdust, manure, and hay on the track, and then tilling it all in and making some sand sections. That back section, like we've always talked about, making rollers. That'll be the next one, and then we're going to infiltrate all the rest of the track with sand as well. And then
now you're talking about the back straight you're going to make into rollers?
We are.
Oh, yep. Okay, that'd be nice.
Part of our whole process when we built the track is we went through and did test digs everywhere to find out where our good soils were, where our bad soils were, and where our rocks were. So that also determined a lot of where our track went, so that because it's the Black Hills, we're on the side of a mountain. It's the Black Hills, they're mountains, there's rocks. So we were very cognizant of figuring out where our deepest soils, where our best soils were, and then also where our rocky spots were, and tried to avoid those or turn those into jumps. And that's kind of how we came up with a true natural terrain track. Is we've had the natural terrain there, enhanced those things, and just kind of continued building the track that way. So the next process will be putting in the tunnels and the new gate and the surface of the track.
I tell you what, if we could get 150 yards of sand whoops, that'd be awesome.
Quit, Aaron.
You should be the guy that loves them. You don't, though, huh?
I just got to say it, man. Since I started riding out here, I love more of an intermediate track.
Yeah.